I want to get our next speakers queued up here. So we have a joint presentation today on the Gorman Creek Habitat Improvement Project in Minnesota. And so we will have Matt Kempinger from Wabasha Soil and Water Conservation District and Kevin Zytkovicz from Minnesota DNR giving us a presentation on Gorman Creek in Wabasha County in Minnesota.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for allowing us to present here today. My name is Kevin Zytkovicz. I'm with the Minnesota DNR River Ecology Unit. We're a statewide unit that assesses and works on rivers. We take a 5-component approach to river management, which are listed on the left side of your screen. And today, well, I work on river restorations, river assessment, river monitoring, training, and outreach. And today I'm going to speak on river restoration. I'm going to pose a couple of landscape level impacts, stuff to think about, and then introduce you to the Gorman Creek restoration. Working on rivers, we try to apply the natural channel design approach, which is applying reference condition onto an impacted site. So what we do is we study stable streams, and where possible, we transpose those onto the site that we're restoring. To understand much about rivers and stability and habitat and all that, you really need to understand what bankful conditions are. It takes a combination of both office and field analysis, bankful indicators, and you use multiple forms of evidence, multiple data sources to ultimately decide, you know, what your bankful conditions are for that site. And there's many variables that go into it, but if you can get your bankful understood, your restoration really comes in line. In terms of other restoration, we're trying to relax human constraints. So, you know, there's common constraints and confinements due to land ownership and infrastructure being the two biggest ones. Ultimately, if we get the proper form, you know, the river function is going to be a byproduct of it. Fish passage being one of them. So connectivity, you know, is turning out to be a real indicator of long-term stability. I want to just touch on these legacy sediments. I've heard some discussion on it, but we did a 5-year sediment study in the Whitewater River, which is in the Driftless area, southeastern Minnesota. And, you know, we've seen this throughout the watershed where, can you see my pointer? Or
yes, we can. Yep.
Oh, okay. So ultimately, we've got cross sections going back to pre-settlement conditions, and in this is just a typical scenario we've seen throughout the Whitewater, where, you know, you've got an old bankful channel that's connected to its floodplain. And, you know, the first 30 years of settlement, nothing much happened. But after that, you know, they were doing what they needed to survive, and they were farming up to, I think, 30% slopes. And it took that long for the soils to break down, and then it let loose. The lower Whitewater filled, you know, 10, 12 feet in a few years, inundated the town of Beaver. They had to abandon it. But when you're thinking about this systemic issue of legacy sediments, and you have a bankful channel that was connected, but due to land use and accumulation of sediments, it's incised. It's incised your channel, and when you get an incised or entrenched channel, that depth goes up. The shear velocities go way up, and it promotes erosion. And our study in terms of bank erosion is about 73, 72% of the total load in the system. And our results kind of align very closely with the 93 study that was done by the NRCS in the Whitewater. So both of them found, about 3/4 of the total load is coming from bank erosion. And when you look at the statewide level, what is the issue? A lot of it, particularly in this highlighted region, Whitewater being part of that, is the issue of fine sediments, and we're swimming in them. In terms of this region, what do we do? What does that imply? What land feature manages fine sediments? Essentially, we got too much clay, too much silt, a lot of fines moving down these systems. And then when you look at the landscape level, you have a river network and you have a road network. And when you look at the intersections on those, there's like 65,000 intersections just on perennial streams alone. So you have to, consider these road designs, do they play a role in watercourse stability? And they do, and we found out they do in the Whitewater, which finished up in 2012. So we decided to look into researching better design methodologies for road designs over river valleys. And this is a 12+ year collaboration and growing, where we apply the geomorphic approach to infrastructure design and recreate low impact, high resilient road designs that work with the natural river. We are growing. We've implemented a cost share program for road authorities to access, and if we can work with them to develop a design, we'll end up paying 25% of the construction costs. So to date, we've probably got maybe 30 or 40 projects on the ground and growing that, many of them aren't exactly right because of what we're presented. We're usually late in the design game. We're trying to come in and make it FEMA compliant or something where we get the project. But now that we got this cost share program, we're actually being able to design and build projects that we can monitor and watch and improve through time. I want to introduce you to this Gorman Creek project that Matt will no doubt talk in much more detail than I will. But this is again, it's in the Driftless area. It's just near Kellogg, Minnesota. This is a 91 photo showing where we've got two spring-fed channels, and they've been channelized through time. And in 2001, we took on Gorman 1, which is essentially shown here in the orangish, and then there's a road in between here, and then the Gorman 2, the more recent project, is this parcel right here. Again, this is a groundwater driven system, so it's spring fed groundwater hydrology. We applied natural channel design. We had to fit within land ownership, budgetary, and infrastructure. The 2003 project we did in-house out of our own unit on Mr. Greenheck's property. And that was back in 2001, and you could see the technology of the day. That's what we had, real-time kinematic GPS, and we were able to go out and survey and work with the landowner to develop a design, and then actually get out and start building this design, which, when you're looking at this view, there's some culverts here that we're connecting into, but the part 2 project is right on the other side of this project. So in 2001, this was probably 2003, is where we were starting to build a channel, and we continued it all the way up valley and ultimately let it sit for a year. We seeded it with native seeds, and then we diverted it. And it's been, in operation since. But we took a lot of what we learned on this one to try to improve what we did on Gorman Creek too. In these projects, there's a lot of people involved with to getting a good project on the ground, and boy, everybody seemed to come together, and we've got a good project here. And we just want to take note that a lot of people put a lot of energy and effort into getting this right, and I think we did a pretty good project. One of the things, again, that we like to make sure we do is get the connection. So before there was, a 6-8 inch drop on the tributary channel where we were able to connect it up through, good design and allow fish passage through there. This was the upper part of the part 2 project, the lower part of the part 1 project that we had connected up, and we've got some good connection for the main channel going through the infrastructure. Here's a before and after LiDAR of what we did on this site. And again, Matt's going to go through it much more. But to get an idea, these were essentially just channelized reaches that we reestablished both a floodplain and a meandering channel on. When you channelize something, you increase the slope, and that exacerbates the channel erosion and the shear and all that. So we're trying to reestablish proper form to allow function to occur. And it shows in terms of habitat diversity of the proposed channel. If you look at in the background, the kind of the magenta colored shots are the shot of the old Delweg, which ended up here. And we actually extended the length of this channel somewhere probably around 700 or 800 feet. So we increased habitat length, we increased habitat diversity just through the diverse habitat of this profile, showing these deeper pools and a more riverine structure as opposed to a channelized straight line grade. That's what's originally dug out. And what I feel is the gem of the project is the tributary channel too. Again, you've got a good consistent slope, which should relate to your bank full slope. This is the water surface slope on the site. But then from that, you've got a lot of diversity in habitat in terms of depth and structure. So this project, we were able to connect the channel to the floodplain, increase habitat diversity, increase channel lengths. Matt probably knows much better than I on the totals. I estimated around 1,500 feet increase of channel length. We connected the infrastructure. We incorporated some unique design features, and ultimately we got a new DNR aquatic management area out of it. So people can go and enjoy this. Here's just a somewhat of a perspective in the use of our hand LiDAR we got. And I'll leave it with that. This is the tributary channel just post seeding prior to mulching. And I'll leave it here for Matt to go into more details of the Gorman 2 project. Thank you.
All right, everybody, let me know if you can see my screen and hear me. Looks like it's the correct screen too.
I can hear you, and I can see you screen sharing.
All right. Yeah, so some of this I'll cover pretty quick. Kevin touched on some of the intro parts of the project, but I'll focus more specifically on the Gorman project here than the background portion. just a map showing you kind of where this is located in the Driftless area. It's in my county, Wabasha. I guess I should introduce myself a little better too. Matt Kempinger here, and work with the Wabasha Soil and Water Conservation District, mostly on agricultural practices, upper watershed stuff, but occasionally get to do some habitat work, and this was a really cool project to be involved with. Um, yeah, so we were we were approached by the DNR to assist with design and administration on getting this project to move forward, and kind of given some baseline factors. We had this site with known easements to work with. You can see that with the red lines in the second picture there. It was kind of an advantage too. We were able to do some work outside of the channel and had some flexibility there because of the wide easement around the main channel. And then the easement attached to the tributary was based on the center line. So if the center line of the channel moved, the easement moved with it. The land where the project was located was managed by pasture, pretty low density grazing, which was kind of a favorable condition as well. The whole site was very flat and entirely wetland of pretty decent quality actually. Here's some conditions of the site before the project was constructed. You can see there on Gorman Creek itself, pretty deeply incised, low width depth ratio, very limited for habitat. There's basically no wood or vegetation in the channel, and not much for riffle pool sort of features. It was just kind of flat and consistent and silt clay bottom. On the right is the tributary. Looks a lot better, but still perfectly straight, limited profile variations, and some room for improvement. A few historical shots of the site gave us some perspective on kind of what to shoot for in restoration. You can see the diagonal alignment there is the channel for the trib before ditching ever occurred. And you can even see some remnants of where the main channel of Gorman went before ditching, and then kind of just the progression throughout time into the straight channels that are there now. So along with those historic photos, we combined information with reference reach data, which was what Kevin had talked about in his presentation from the Whitewater watershed mostly. This photo on the right is just an example of one of those sites along the south branch of the Whitewater River near Iota. You can see a lot of the pattern that we were shooting for with increasing sinuosity and meander widths and all those kinds of things. The table below is just all those parameters that we were able to incorporate in some way or another into this project. So this layout on the right is kind of just a good picture of how this played out. The big factor in being able to succeed in this one was construction outside of the existing channel alignment. And you can see on the main channel, at least the right side of that plan, we did have a few crossing locations just to kind of get a more natural look and flow to this stream. And because of that, we had to create kind of a complex phasing to this construction, making sure that links were done, in the right order, and vegetation had some time to establish before flow went through those new channels. But really, yeah, that was kind of a unique thing about this project. I think that almost none of the work was done in the original channel. So moving on, the big factor balancing the costs and benefits was limiting excavation. In order to do that, we had set starting elevations at the culvert on both sides, and then having to tie in with the existing channel at the end. So we weren't able to bring up the start to decrease excavation of the floodplain. So we did it by adding a big grade break, which you can see in the diagram below. This is an exaggerated profile, but shows the idea of how we're able to achieve this, basically by creating a kind of cascading rock boulder rapid area down at the bottom end, and then minimizing slope through the rest of the project. Along with that, we focus pretty heavy on the geomorphology, kind of what Kevin talked about, setting the stream up to be able to transport the water and the sediment in all flows most efficiently, kind of with the perspective that along with vegetation, that would be the biggest benefit in terms of habitat for the fish there. We did still incorporate some constructed habitat features as well, which I'll get to later. The site, as I mentioned, was very wet, and because of that, construction kind of had to depend on cold weather. Thankfully, we did this last year, not this year. I'm not sure how it would have happened. But you can see with doing most of this work in February when conditions were cold, frost was pretty heavy everywhere. It was still a mess. We were able to achieve the results we needed and follow SWIP plans and everything still. It looks a lot better now, and there's room to go as vegetation comes up too, but just kind of shows what you have to get through in order to get to the proper result. I think an interesting thing about one of these photos in that upper left, the soil profile, just from one of those channel cuts, you can see that buried original topsoil horizon from pre-settlement, like Kevin had touched on in the Whitewater watershed as well. Interestingly, when we hit that during the project, there was always water flowing through that. It was kind of like a confining layer above that. So when you got down to that, you had to work fast. You'd be sinking in pretty quick. This just shows a bit of a progression throughout time from up above what this project looked like. You can see just a Google Earth photo of the original condition, straight channel, beginning of construction in March of 23. Most of the way through, but channel flow wasn't connected into the new channel yet in May. And then this photo I just took last week. So really it's all done now, just needs to have some time to green up and for fish to move through it. But yeah, I'll just touch on these practices real quick. Some of the things we did were placing spawn size gravel, brook trout preferred spawn size gravel in various locations. We got about 273 linear feet of that channel covered, 9 different locations, and you could already see activity. There were some reds present even in the first year. I think this photo was from late November, early December last fall. And then at the inlet pools, we protected those kind of more vulnerable areas with pretty large root wads from the box elder trees that were present along the banks pre-project. We installed 8 hammerhead pools, which were on the tightest meanders of the project, incorporated towwood across the outside banks, and then rocked riffles with keys at these locations to act as grade control throughout the project as well. These are certainly the deepest places along the profile of the new channel and will be excellent winter habitat for the trout. You can see that bottom left photo, that hammerhead pool looks kind of unnaturally large just because we we gave the contractor a little bit of flexibility on getting those installed, and there's a pretty low sediment load in this watershed compared to others, so I think they will be stable and pretty long lasting despite the large size. Another practice we installed in a few locations were cover rocks, using limestone from the area, large flat rocks, 2 stacks of them, one on top of the other with about a 6-inch to 1 foot overhang, just to give the trout a place to hide. And then really the most critical, as I touched on already, of all the practices we did was that rock shoot. Rock arch rapids was originally what we were thinking, but it really ended up being kind of this dispersion of large boulders with a heavy base of rock underneath to kind of disrupt the flow, and so it's not one straight line, high velocity, hard for fish to pass, and dangerous to downstream banks as we bring that slope down at the end of the project. That slope ended up being about 1.7%, which was drastically larger than the rest, but still plenty of resting places and channels for fish to come up. We couldn't have done this without the participation of the landowner, and incorporating his needs into the project as well. So in order to do that, we installed one cattle crossing for him to have access to the far side of the channel without having the cattle have access to everything and potentially causing significant damage. Along with that, he agreed to do sort of a flash graze type management through there, which should be beneficial to vegetation, and as long as it's done right, not cause significant damage to the new stream here. And then the practice on the right photo there was just an off-channel source of water for cattle originally, but kind of seems to be ending up more likely to just be a sort of wetland habitat. And as you can see, there were already some swans sitting in there just the other day when I flew over. I have a video here, but I think I'll skip it for the sake of time, and I have a QR code on the next slide that can lead you guys to it as well. But if we have time for questions, we can talk now. Otherwise, I can answer some in the Q&A, and definitely scan that QR code if you want to see more media on the construction process for this one.
Thanks so much, Matt and Kevin. This is such a great presentation. This was a very involved project, and as probably the listeners have gathered, this is a bigger undertaking than some past projects, but you can really see the results. It's a very new channel and lots of new habitat constructed. I really applaud you guys for biting off such a comprehensive project. But, and like was said, I think Kevin mentioned this area is available for folks to go and check it out too. Might be a fun area to fish.
Yeah, for sure in a few years.
Yeah, absolutely.